Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dallas Knight. I'm the Vice President of Client Success and Channel here at Blue Light. I'm a combat veteran and have an extensive background as an intelligence analyst in the law enforcement realm. I love working for Blue Light, and in case you're new to understanding who Blue Light is, I like to sum the organization up in 3 words, and that is we are experienced, being that the majority of our organization is prior law enforcement, prior military, or a combination of the 2. We are cleared, we're able to work in the federal space very easily, and we are innovative. And that brings us to what is Blue Fusion. And again, summing up in 3 words, although you're going to get much more well acquainted through the session, is Blue Fusion is efficiency. It streamlines the workflow, and you'll see that very easily. It cuts time by up to 80% in the workflow of collecting, consolidating, and getting to a point of analysis and investigation. It is very adaptable. You'll see and understand that we are agnostic around the board and very flexible. So with that said, today's session is on intelligent military operations. We're going to be discussing our use case and implementation at US SOCOM. Our agenda today is to go over that project, including the requirements, some of the challenges that we faced, and of course our successes there. We will have a solution overview in regards to the solution that we implemented there and where we see it going and growing into, followed by a live demonstration of that environment. And then of course, we will end with any Q&A. Now for some logistics, please leverage our Q&A section of the Zoom meeting to pose any questions. That will be being monitored, and our team will be on standby to answer any of those questions, or we will address them at the end. And of course, the chat is there for you guys to leverage to comment or talk amongst yourselves. And without further ado, to lead our project overview at US SOCOM, it is my pleasure to introduce Blue Light COO Edwin Bogus, who was our lead and primary project manager at the project. So, Mr. Bogus, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dallas. Good morning, folks. As Dallas said, my name is Ed Bogus. I'm the COO for Blue Light, retired military, where I spent 26 years in the military. A majority of that time spent in Special Forces here at Fort Bragg with the 3rd Special Forces Group. I've been with Blue Light for several years and worked with Bruce Parker and our CEO, building this awesome company called Blue Light. And now, as we branch out with our Blue Fusion technologies, our IP, and as you'll learn today with Blue Fusion, what it really does for the analyst is really reversing the time spent gathering intelligence to the opposite direction of basically 20% gathering that intelligence and 80% actually doing that intel work. But to jump back to SOCOM this morning, this was a project that we started a couple of years ago down at US SOCOM. And the requirement they hit us with was to come in, deploy an enterprise analytical solution, which was the I2 Analyst Notebook Enterprise Insight Intelligence solution. It gives you Analyst Notebook on the front side with it, and then it has a collaborative database on the back side. Very, very good software. Works well for the analyst, and it's been around in pretty much a corporate standard when it comes for analytics out there in the world today. Deploy solutions on 4 networks. Our requirement was to deploy this on NIPR, SIPR, Socrates, and BICES for our NATO partners. We presently, as we work through this, as you'll see on the next statement with the ATO standards, but we presently have NIPR deployed. SIPR is going out now, and we have the ATO coming in on that probably about the middle of this month. And then soon after, we should have Socrates, and we'll be working on BICES as a solution to get out with our NATO partners. The ATO standards, 2 years ago, I couldn't even spell ATO. And then all of a sudden, I was hit with this requirement. If you've never experienced the ATO process, you're in for a real experience. It's a long, drawn-out process. And as you'll see here in just a few seconds, some of the challenges we hit. Right at the time that we started this project, COVID hit. So naturally, everything shut down, and trying to get anything done was virtually impossible unless we were just working on our own to get it done without the military and US SOCOM, because they essentially shut the operation down except for very few people. to connect to numerous databases, disparate databases. Requirement was to reach out, connect to multiple databases, bring data back in through I2 Connect. The preserved 12 years of Palantir data. This process was an ETL process that is a basically extract, translate, and load that data into another database where you can actually query that data. We were looking at probably close to, I think what we're looking at SIPR is close to 7 terabytes of unzipped data. So that's going to be an interesting once we start unzipping that data and ETLing that data into the SIPR database. Provide the deep analytics for 3,000 analysts worldwide. We're already working with a couple of the TSOCs now, which TSOCs are your SOC core and your over in SOC core and SOC Euro. I think the ones that are working with it right now. Provide training to the SOCOM data team, the analysts that were basically on the ground working with the soldiers out on the ground, training them so they could go out and take the training forward. Continue that. Next slide. Here's our challenges that we ran into. Like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, COVID hit, and when COVID hit, everything shut down. And that just kind of leads to that customer staffing where it was virtually impossible to find anybody working down at SOCOM at the time. The ATO process, no matter what you do, you're looking at a year-long process generally. Very rarely, there's a few units out there that can get things done very rapidly, but SOCOM is not one that it just takes a while to get it processed through their system. So you're looking at a year and throw COVID on top of that, that generated up to about 1.5 years. The EIA upgrades, we were getting EIA upgrades during the process. And that just took a while to get everything put in place and to do the upgrades with it. The Palantir database integrations. Palantir, for all a good software solution, but when working with Palantir and trying to extract, translate, and load that data into the I2 software entities and links is a process and takes time to actually make that happen. The security schema, when you're dealing with NATO partners worldwide, trying to make sure that we have units that are able to see, some countries can see data, your Five Eyes, so on across the world have ability to see certain databases or data where others can't. And it's just a complicated schema once you start working with it. And then a single sign-on down at SOCOM so that the sign-on is nice and simple for the analyst to get on. Next slide. The successes that we had. We ATO'd I2 Enterprise Insight Analysis. First time it's ever been done. Same thing with the I2 Connect with the Blue Fusion ATO. First time it had been done with I2 Connect and with Blue Fusion, our Blue Fusion software as well. Blue Fusion came in a little way down the road, and that solved our connector issue with our federated searches. Instead of with I2 Connect, when we had to go out and search each database individually, once we put Blue Fusion into the play, it allowed you from a single point to be able to go out, do one search, hit every database simultaneously, and bring that data back for the analyst to work with. The Palantir integration piece, it's an ongoing process, but we're having very good success with it now and getting the data into I2. Training and resourcing has gone well. We've trained pretty much majority of the troops, or especially the, as they call them, the trainers themselves down at SOCOM. And they're out now working with the soldiers. We had a 5-star CPARS rating coming out with SOCOM. And which good deals usually lead to future sales. And the key part to this is a very repeatable solution as far as deployments go. It's easy to take what we've done now, take that same solution and pop it anywhere, any place, at any time, and deploy the solution. So, next slide, Dallas. Is that it?
That is all we have for you, sir. I really appreciate you sharing your insight and overview of the solution down at SOCOM, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty now. If anyone has any questions for Ed or in regards to specifically the SOCOM environment or project, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We can get back to you. I'm not sure how long Ed's going to be able to stay on with us. or you can reach out to us directly at info@bluelightllc.com.
I'm going to stay on for a few, Dallas, but I'm going to have to jump off, but I'll jump right back
Yeah.
on.
All right, sounds good. All right, so let's talk about the architecture of the solution as a whole, both from a kind of a vague standpoint as well as specifically towards this operation. So overarching, any industry, any use case, any investigative or analysis unit that I have come to know deals with these four primary layers on the left-hand side. Some better than others, some are very challenging. Starting with the top layer being that data source layer, everyone has an abundance of data in this day and age. Some of it is internal, some of it is owned, some of it's subscribed to, some of it's external and accessed through a web browser, Excel files, unstructured files. The sky's the limit really when it comes to data nowadays. It's basically more or less choosing what you don't want to incorporate versus what you do. With that said, there was a huge challenge that we've seen over the last several years in regards to the time consumption that it was taking users, investigators, analysts, operators, all of the above to collect, consolidate, and research that data and get it to a point where they can actually conduct analysis and support investigations and operations. So hence Blue Fusion was born, and it fits nice and snug right between that data source layer and the user interface layer, whatever that may be. Now, for demonstration purposes, we will be demonstrating Blue Fusion seamlessly integrated with Analyst Notebook, also known as Enterprise Insight Analysis, with Notebook being the primary UI. It fits right there snug. It connects to the various data sources that are required by your organization, and we provide a very user-friendly federated query. Again, federated query. So you are asking one question and it is simultaneously hitting multiple data sources, giving you a consolidated view, and then allowing you to push it to the user interface of your choosing. We also provide an intelligence data store that is also a collaborative environment. So as you're collecting data from various data sources, we want to be able to save that information and leverage it tomorrow or maybe next year or 10 years down the road. Historical intelligence is wonderful. So providing a collaborative environment so that the team can access that information no matter where they are can be very important to the solution as a whole. So in regards to those four layers, the robust enterprise solution addresses all of those, with the key factor being that Blue Fusion technology saving you a lot of time and effort. Now, specifically with the SOCOM environment, some of the data sources, my PowerPoint is getting ahead of me, sorry. Some of the data sources that we leveraged right out of the gate were primarily around events and geolocation of those events. The one that stuck was ACLED, although we did build connectors to GDELT, Live UA, and then eventually we put all of the Palantir intelligence information into a database and we tapped into that as well. So now when users go in and query Blue Fusion, they have the ability to query across events in the respective open source intelligence, as well as and simultaneously with their historical information that has been added throughout the years into Palantir. Now the sky's the limit and they are actively looking for other data sources, but ones that come across the desk every day are structured and unstructured files. So to address any of the structured files, those are easily ingested into the solution. And unstructured files, we reached out to our amazing partner, Rizoka, and implemented another seamless plugin into the solution. Rizoka is a text analytics application that can take multiple files and multiple documents in basically any language you can imagine, ingest them and understands them, and then turns them into entities, links, and properties so that you can visually see them in conjunction with the other data that has been previously referenced. And then, as I mentioned, all of this is easily queried and then fed into that user interface layer. And for this environment and for this demonstration today, we'll be leveraging Analyst Notebook in conjunction with Enterprise Insight Analysis as an overarching perspective. So I'm going to jump right into the software. So just give me a second and we'll get that up and going. and make sure I'm logged in and everything is good. And again, just a logistics, if you have any questions along the hour, go ahead and plug those in the Q&A and we will absolutely get to those at the end. All right, so within my screen, you are essentially looking at the primary user interface of the solution, which also happens to be Analyst Notebook. Let me go ahead and make this full screen real quick. All right, so everything is seamlessly integrated. As the user comes in, they're not having to log into multiple data sources and databases and user interfaces. They can come in and very easily leverage one platform and access the majority of the data or the data that is required. We have done several instances of phased approaches. So if you want to start with maybe 2 of your primary data sources and then work your way up to 5, 10, sky's the limit, then we welcome that. So jumping directly into the technology, I'm going to start with our Blue Fusion query, because again, it ties all of your data right into your user interface so that you can streamline that workflow and conduct investigations, operations, and analysis much more efficiently. So within Blue Fusion, it's a very flexible and easy way to ask the most complex question you can dream up. You have your entities and links that are customized based on your requirements. So whatever entities that you're leveraging day to day, that is what you'll see in this list. So it's as easy as selecting a few entities that pertain to the question that you want to ask and establishing the relationship between those. And then once you're satisfied with this query, you just set the parameters or the conditions. So for example, if you have details on this person, whether it's descriptors or identifiers, you can plug those in here. For example, you want to look at names, we can plug in partial names and what have you. It's also important to note that this ontology is constructed, although there is a template, it is constructed in conjunction with you. So we want to make sure to weed out the noise and to meet your requirements. So if for some reason, your data never offers something like eye color, or you never have a need for eye color, why bombard you with that type of unnecessary information? So we sit down with you in the beginning stages, understand what the requirements and what is pertinent in your investigative process, and then ensure that the solution is meeting those requirements and not giving you a ton of noise or unrequired information. So anyway, we can go ahead and plug in any of the properties and conditions that meet your question here. Again, it's very flexible, and you can, draw this out 10 entities wide with all of the relationships you can imagine and all of the conditions. Now, when you hit search, 1 of 3 things is typically going to happen. You're going to get results. You'll be satisfied with those results, and you'll proceed on your workflow. That's option 1. Option 2, you get results, you're dissatisfied with those results, and that's okay. You have the flexibility to come back to the drawing board, make some adjustments, and either drill down on your information or make it a little more vague so you get more results. Or option 3, you don't get any results, and that absolutely happens. Sometimes the data is not there, or it's not there just yet. Now, again, Blue Fusion has connectors built directly to the data sources themselves. So you're always going to have the most real-time results, being that the question isn't asked or pulled of that data until you hit search. So with all of that in mind, we wanted to give the user the ability to save these queries so that 1, they can come back to them and very easily ask them, but 2, it also allows the entire team to leverage your efforts. So if, for example, I wanted to save this query, of course, I picked entities that don't pertain. So give me 1 second. I'm not sure to let me save just 1 entity, of course. Gotta love live demonstrations, but I thrive on them. So I would have it no other way. All right, so within my person, it's mad because I didn't define my property there. But my person in my organization, I wanted to save this query. I then have the ability to share it with my team. And then my favorite part of being able to save this query is having it run reoccurring. So what does that mean? I'm essentially hiring a virtual analyst to work for me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at my discretion. I decide when I want it ran next. Maybe it's at the top of my hour. and then at what interval I want it run. So I can have it run as often as every hour or as infrequent as every 24th week, if that is my prerogative. So this query will be running on the back end at that interval. And then, of course, I want to be notified of these results. So I'm Jenny in this environment, just so you know. But I identify which users within the solution are going to be notified. If I want my entire team, management, whatever, to be notified of the query results, then I just move them over to the notify users section, and then we're all notified internally. It can also be set up to be notified externally. So if you wanted an email, we're also working on the ability to send text messages out, then that would be available to you as well. Now, leveraging a saved query is as easy as picking it from a list. So I saved this query yesterday in preparation for our demonstration today. And I'm looking for now an organization. I've defined the organization type that's linked to an event, and I've also defined the event type. So this time actually running the query, it's going to hit all of those data sources that I'm connected to and simultaneously, and then bring back a consolidated view of those results. Now, within the list of the results, I can look at this information further. I can interrogate the data before I actually ever send it to the chart. If, again, I'm satisfied with my results, I'm going to proceed with my workflow. And for this workflow, I'm absolutely going to add these items to my chart. So now my results are visually represented on Analyst Notebook, and I can continue to leverage my connectors in that Blue Fusion technology right here by simply expanding or even filtering my expands on this data. So a simple right click and filtered expand, I'm able to pick and choose what entities I want brought forth. So if I only want to see other organizations that are tied to these events, or maybe I want to pivot on my organizations and I only want to see other events that these organizations are tied to, or anything in between, I can come in here and be selective. Or I can do a straight expand, which also allows me the ability to go out a number of degrees of separation. So if I want to go out 2 degrees, I want to see everything, then I can do that and hit continue. I can go out 3 or 4 degrees. And then again, it's going to tap into those data sources live simultaneously and bring back those results, but this time adding them directly to my chart. So now I have added organizations as well as locations in regards to this information. Now within the SOCOM solution, we also have the ability to see this information on a map. So at any time, I can push this information onto my map pane over here and look and see where these events are actually occurring. Now, speaking of maps, within Blue Fusion, we also have the requirement to be able to query on a map. So with that, this technology is being built out further, but I'll give you a little taste of what is yet to come. So here, again, we kind of just start with a map, and now we're going to work our way backwards. So we have 2 ways to query against the map. And if you are familiar with any type of geospatial queries, then these will be very familiar to you. And that is a radius search as well as a polygon search. So we can determine our point, establish our radius, or we can, of course, draw a polygon around a given territory. And then, oh, my computer's playing catch up. And then, of course, we can set parameters around date and time, and then run that query against a geospatial component. This too is a federated query. So it's going to hit those connectors, those data sources simultaneously, understand anything that pertains to a geospatial component within this territory, and then bring it back. You would actually see the entities. I don't have any data to run against here, but you would actually see your entities, and it would be mapped on this interface, and then you would have the ability to look at it from a listed perspective as well as send it to your chart. Now back to the chart. If at one point you are satisfied with these results in your analysis and you want to be able to save this information, share it with your team, brief management, come back to it at a later point. Again, we discussed that collaborative and information store or intelligence repository. So the ability to save this information as it's coming in from various data sources is available to you by two primary ways. One, we can take all of the records that you see here and we can push them into the information store. And it will tell you how many new records. If there are records that already exist that are the same, then it will also tell you that it found duplications and if you want to update that record. So you have that ability. You also have the ability to publish the information, and I have Zoom's banner up here blocking my view. Okay, sorry. We also have the ability to publish this information, so I can actually take this entire chart and give it a name, some notes, set security parameters and what have you, and upload the actual chart to the information store. Now, the advantages of doing it either way are really just how you want to be able to see that data. If you want to be able to see the information as it's been outlined on your chart, then saving it as a chart is wonderful because you'll be able to come back to it as well as anyone else that has access to the collaborative environment. But furthermore, it also indexes everything on the chart. So when you're querying the data, it's not just going to look for the title or a description that you put in this cover letter type. Every single detail within the contents of your chart is indexed, and therefore you can search on it, even if it was just one tiny little word in the description of one of your entities. Now let's dive into that collaborative environment and understand how we can leverage that as information is being pulled and analyzed and then vetted and then pushed into that environment. You have two ways to query. Our quick search is essentially like a Google search. My asterisk will bring anything and everything that's in my information store. So on the left-hand side, you can see all of the entity types as well as quantities that live within my collaborative environment. And then I can drill down on any of this information. So if I wanted to focus on my events, I'm going to get another filter of data. If I wanted to look, say, at the event type of strategic developments, I'm drilling down further. Maybe I want to look at events that happened in 2022. So you can see how this drill down continues to happen. And then, of course, at any time, this list over here is available for you to push to your chart. So again, I can just add this right in conjunction with the rest of the data that lives on my chart. And I can also, similar to the workflow that you've already seen, continue to explore and to expand on this data either from my connectors or from my intelligence repository. So from my intelligence repository, same two features. Again, a lot of familiarity as far as capability goes. We can do an expand or a filtered expand. Again, that filter expand allows you to pick and choose what entities you want to bring back. So in this instance, we get a little preview. There are 14 organizations that are associated with these events. So let's go ahead and add those to the chart. And then if I wanted to expand again, I can get a little preview of what it has to offer. And it looks like I have some individuals as well. So let's add those to the chart. And so you can see how this workflow is very easily and seamless. And again, saving you time. So typically when you approach investigations, operations, intelligence, you're either going to start with one little bit of intel and grow it out as you've seen me do here, whether that's through a question or looking at a specific entity and growing out that network, or you're going to start with an abundance of data of which you can leverage a lot of the capabilities within Analyst Notebook to drill down on your information, determine what is pertinent of that data, and then push it again to that collaborative vetted repository. Now that we've kind of seen leveraging our data sources as well as our collaborative environment, exploring those networks, I want to bring in another set of data from a completely different source that is often very difficult to leverage, especially in these types of environments, and that is unstructured data. As I mentioned up front, we leveraged our partnership with Rizoka Text Analytics to bring in their capability. They are able to process documents in over 200 languages. Just about any unstructured file you can imagine can easily be ingested, and grabbing that information is also very easy. So if I want to start a new collection, I can just create one, determine if I want to grab an entire folder, if I want to pick and choose which files. You reach out, you touch that folder, those files, and you bring them in. Once you bring them in, you have this collection here. I've brought in 20 documents. There are various means. There's Word documents, PDFs, text, notebook charts, and so on. I brought all these in, and it automatically looks through these documents. And of course, depending on how many documents you bring in, it does take some time to process, but I've already processed this collection, and then it pulls out all of the entities and the links and all of the attributes within. So you can see here how it categorizes them. If I wanted to look at, say, my organizations, I can sift through here, see what organizations were pulled out of these 20 documents. And of course, I can run this little kind of like Google search against it and query within these documents. So if I was looking for a particular person, such as Sergey Skripal, I can start to search for him and then find him in my list, and I can immediately send him to my chart. So it's going to automatically build out that entity. And now I want to explore Sergey. So I can do that a couple of ways. I can just do an expand and see everything, or pick and choose what I want brought forth that he is attached to pertaining to these documents, and it will automatically build out my entities, links, and properties. Now, if I'm more interested to explore where he's noted in these documents, or understand specifically the relationships, for example, that it's brought back, I absolutely can do that right from this environment as well. So let's take a look at Sergey. Looking within the document, it'll bring up every document of the 20 that I processed that he's referenced in, and it highlights him in all the various ways. Now you can see this is in a different language, but I can easily flip this into English. It's not a verbatim translation. It's more of a, I forget what they call, but essentially you're going to get the gist of things. You're going to understand what is going on. So you can see the various entities here, and then I can also get a nice little preview of the different variations of his name, other pronouns that are used, as well as his relationships here. So I can see that within this document, he's linked to one person, two places, and there's a couple of timestamps as well. Now it goes for any of the relationships as well. So if I was curious on how Sergey was linked to this individual here, I would just look at the actual link, the relationship, and look at that within the document. And so here, again, a different language. Let's flip it to English. And that way I can start to understand within my document where that relationship is derived, and better understand the context of that relationship for the validating. And then, as I already mentioned, at any point in time, if you validated this information, being that's coming in from another data source, we can take that and feed it directly into our collaborative environment. So now I want to capture this, and maybe I want to publish the chart as a whole. I'm going to upload that. We'll just call this my Sergey chart. If I wanted to add any notes, upload that into, it's also going to save a local copy for you, and that can be uploaded into the information store. Now back to the information store. Again, if I wanted to do that quick search up here and search for Sergey, not only is it going to bring, well, let's delete these. You'll see it brings back that chart, and notice that it's referenced within the chart text. Now, if I took the other route of uploading the individual records, then all of that data would be within the collaborative environment as individual records, and I can explore that one by one. All right, so essentially we have gone over the two ways that we've implemented our Blue Fusion queries. That's through our federated visual query as well as our federated geospatial query. We've brought data back from various data sources into the analyst notebook environment, and then you push that data into a collaborative intelligence kind of vetted repository. We've also leveraged unstructured data, leveraging Rizoka text analytics, and consolidating and collaborating that information with the rest of the information. We went over querying and searching through our information store, and we can also set up a visual query within our information store as well. So very similar to what you saw with Blue Fusion. We can run queries within that database as well and set parameters and get those results that way. And then we've also gone over the ability to explore by expanding on data that's currently on your chart very easily and within all of your data sources, including unstructured text. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is essentially the environment, not only that we have installed at US SOCOM, but we're installing across industries worldwide. And as I mentioned before, it's very flexible and it is agnostic on both ends, data agnostic and platform agnostic. We can connect directly to just about any data source that you're already leveraging or want to leverage, and then feed the intelligence platform of your choosing. It takes us on average about 2 weeks to stand up a connector from scratch. So if it's a data source that we haven't done business with necessarily, once we have documentation and understanding of that data source, again, it takes our team only about 80 hours to stand that up. That is record speed, in case you didn't know, which allows us to also be very cost efficient, and that it's not taking our developers, weeks and weeks or months or even years to stand up data connectors. And then one of the other key things that I'm going to nail on the head again is the efficiency that Blue Fusion brings to the table. Again, we're connecting directly to your data sources. We're not duplicating, replicating anything. We're not moving your data. We're connecting to your data, providing you the most real-time results so that you can have real-time answers and analysis, and then providing you a collaborative environment if that's required, so that you can save your vetted data and then come back to it or share it with your team no matter where you're located. So with that, I greatly appreciate your time. I will conclude with, if I can move my Zoom again out of the way, I will conclude with, and this list is ever growing, but essentially why do I have, hold on. There we go. I will conclude, as I've been saying, with our connector library. So essentially, this is our growing list. I know that I do not have all of our data connectors on here. I can't keep up with our development team, quite frankly, but this is a good gist of it. So to give you an understanding of the relationships that we've already built, the vendors that we already have partnered with, the connectors that we already have built out and that you can leverage moving forward. We want to grow this list by 10 times fold and provide our clients with the most robust connector library possible. So again, if you see a data source that you're currently leveraging or want to leverage that's not on this list, that doesn't mean that we can't build it. We would be honored to be able to provide that to you. So I'm going to go ahead and take a peek at our Q&A. But also I wanted to let you guys know that we are having 2 breakout sessions immediately following this Zoom. You can go one of 2 ways if you want to talk sales or training. I think Don is on and he's going to plug that into the chat so that you can get a direct link to that Zoom. It will start at the top of the hour. Or you can just plug that Zoom meeting ID that you see there into the platform, and you can go have a discussion with our sales or training team. Also, Blue Light provides a grant writer free of charge. He's prior law enforcement and very versed in the space and understands based on your initiatives and requirements where he might be able to help find you money. So please leverage him. He will be on our tech Zoom as well as some of our technical leaders. So if you have any further questions around the technology or the aspects of the back end or implementation, you can go ahead and join that. And if you don't have time for either of those, that's quite all right. I've provided several email addresses down below, depending on the type of conversation that you want to have. And I'm happy to address any questions that you want to plug in the Q&A now. So taking a peek of those, the question, can we get this recording for intern? Absolutely. This session is being recorded and will be available probably within the next 24 to 48 hours to you. I believe we are going to send a link out to all of the individuals that registered for the event so that they can view it again. So yes, the recording is available for viewing after our session today. Actually, that was asked a couple of times, and I don't know if John is still on, but because he looks like he had to leave early, but yes, the recording will be available. And it looks like the chat is blocked. So just take note of that Zoom meeting ID. And again, that starts at the top of the hour. You can plug that in, and we can answer any further questions there, or again, the emails are available to you. All right, another question. Have you done any logistics related projects? And if so, can you talk about how you applied blue light to illusions? So Dan, I'm actually delivering today's demo day, and it's 5 demonstrations, 5 use cases. I'd like to say 5 industries, but really it probably covers about 15 different industries. We are delivering a demonstration. I believe it is the third session that will absolutely be covering a logistics supply chain use case. So I would either A, if you have the time, encourage you to pop over to that session, or B, if you could email info@bluelightllc.com and request that recording after today, I would be happy to give you that link so that you can watch that on your own time and effort. And that is all. I'm not sure if you guys can see the questions, the Q&A, but if you can, Dawn has posted the 2 links to the Zoom meetings for the sales and training, also known as our success team, or the tech and grants. So that is easy for you as well. Or again, the Zoom ID is there. Another question came in. Is Blue Fusion just a federated query tool? What is the collaborative environment? All right, Paul. Yeah, great question. So if I were to go back, I'm just going to go back a couple slides. So when looking at the overarching architecture, Blue Fusion fits in and is often referred to somewhat as a middleware. So it is that bridge. It's those connectors that is like builds you directly into your data sources. Now, with that said, Blue Fusion can do 2 things once those connectors are established. Well, it can do many things, but in regards to where you want the data to go after that in workflow, as you've seen here today, I can feed an intelligence platform. Again, the demonstration I illustrated today is leveraging Analyst Notebook and Enterprise Insight Analysis. However, we have integrations with other platforms such as Maltego, Tableau, Kibana, all of them. We do not discriminate. So any intelligence platform or visual link analysis platform that you want to feed, we can absolutely do that. Now, with that said, Blue Fusion also stands on its own 2 feet. So if the requirement is to simply connect directly to your data sources, have the most real-time results, not want to duplicate, replicate data, and be able to query that information simultaneously and get a really quick understanding of that data, then you can access Blue Fusion through a secure web browser and do all of that. And what you do from there is kind of your prerogative. You would have the ability to download that data in like an Excel spreadsheet type of format or capture it. If you don't have the need or requirement to feed an intelligence platform and further the analysis or the investigation. So you have both of those options. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so thank you, Warner, for letting me know that you can't see each other's questions. We'll, Dawn, have to make an adjustment for our next session to make sure our chat is on. But with that said, I will go back to the, let me go back to that slide that has the Zoom meeting IDs. So you can just plug those meeting IDs at the top of the hour and then further this conversation, again, sales and training or tech and grants. Okay, another question, can Blue Fusion import new data into a database or shared folder? So Blue Fusion is often leveraged as a way to pull data from already established databases and shared folders. We have not had the requirement to turn around and feed it. However, with that said, we can feed a collaborative environment. So I don't see why not. We just haven't had that requirement yet. So if that's something I honestly would love to have a actual voice to voice conversation with you, Paul, so that we could better understand the requirement. And I would like to validate that I am understanding what you're asking of me. But as I've mentioned, Blue Fusion is very flexible and we have the ability to plug in. We've actually even plugged our technology into other vendors that have robust technology. For example, our next session is going to be on human and sex trafficking and conjunction in leveraging and partnering with Cobweb's technologies. And so they have a beautiful platform, a very robust analytical platform, and we have the ability to embed Blue Fusion within that platform. So as you're focusing on your OSINT rabbit trails that you're going down, and you get to a point you need to leverage internal data sources, for example, then you can leverage Blue Fusion to simultaneously query your internal sources and then feed them into Cobwebs and have that commingle with your OSINT information. So again, if you're kind of interested in that realm or just want to see what Cobwebs looks like, or leveraging OSINT as a various technology, or you're in the human sex trafficking realm, or it's just interest of you, that is our next session coming up at the half hour. I do get a 30-minute break in between these sessions, so that's wonderful.